Hey guys, it's Rob. I'm back. We're doing another Proving Grounds practice walkthrough. This time we're doing a machine called Compromised. It is a Windows machine and it is rated as easy. And boy, oh boy, this one's a doozy. The foothold is fairly easy. I had no problem there. The privilege escalation part, not so easy. I struggled and I had to actually use a hint from a walkthrough. And then I spent about 2 hours going through it just so I made sure I could explain it to you guys. But without further ado, you can see I am on Offsec's VPN, and I do have compromise spun up, and there's the IP address. Now, we ran an mmap scan, service version detection, T4, all ports, aggressive, and a bunch of stuff came back. 80, 443, SMB, 5985, evil-winrm. Now, 443 says it's running PowerShell web test website, and you can actually utilize that if you'd like, but there's really no need. It's kind of a red herring and it's kind of kludgy. Um, you could utilize evil-winrm for this machine. So let's get started. The first thing I did was I went to the websites. Like I said, 80 is just the standard IIS page that says it works. And then 443 is running the PowerShell web test access website. I didn't mess around with it too much. The first thing I actually did was to try to enumerate some shares. So we have SMB client. And if we list all the shares available, there are a bunch. There's admin, the C drive, IPC, scripts, and users. Now, if you try to go to the scripts one, you're going to get access denied. So I started with users. So we're going to do SMB client. Oops. Wrong IP address. I do that all the time. Sorry, guys. All right, if we hit enter, we get a prompt. So ls, it looks like we're in the users folder. So it's definitely worth poking around in here. You're not going to get into the administrator folder, but I did try getting into the scripting folder. And if we do an ls, there's a bunch of stuff in here. So I immediately went to the desktop. Do an ls, we have local.txt and readme.txt. So if we try to get local.txt, which is the user flag, we get access denied. But I can try and get the readme. All right, let's see what the readme says. README says, please keep your personal shares locked down. Just because it's hidden doesn't mean it's not accessible, yada, yada, yada. Don't store passwords in your scripts. Encoding is not encryption, and this information can be lifted from the logs. Okay, so that's easy enough. So let's go back and let's see what else we can find here. So that was all that's on desktop. Let's try and go into the documents folder. And there's a Windows PowerShell directory. So let's try and go in there. Do a dir. And there's a profile.ps1. So why don't we get that? We are on an SMB share, so we can do get. So get profile.ps1. Okay. And I think we can exit out here for now. So if we go back to our folder and we look at profile.ps1, well, as security said, you don't want to be encoding passwords because that's not encryption. So it looks like somebody has encoded their password. So if we grab this string and we go to a website where we can decode it, and we click decode, we get friends don't let friends base 64 passwords. So I'm going to guess that's the password for this scripting user. So we'll copy that. And then this is where I went right to evil-winrm now that I have a set of credentials. So we can do evil-winrm, and that's the right IP address. So all we're doing is the user is scripting, which we assumed based on the fact that we just got into the SMB share, there's a user directory called scripting. And then the password we just got, and then the IP address of the machine. So if we hit enter, we get a prompt. So like I said, the foothold was pretty easy. So if we back out of here, we should be able to get the user flag now. So we'll go into CD desktop, dir, and we'll type local.txt. And there's the user flag. Now, I poked around for a while, and what I ultimately ended up finding was if you go to the C drive and you do a dir, everything looks kind of standard except for this troubleshooting folder. You don't typically see that, so let's go in there, troubleshooting. We'll do a dir, and there's a logs.ps1 in here. So I think we can try and type logs.ps1 and see what happens. Okay, so it's running a PowerShell script. So it's getting the event log, and it is piping it to a CSV file, which is essentially comma separated value. So let's see if we can run it. So I think for PowerShell it's dot and then dot backslash the name of the script. So because we are in a PowerShell prompt. So ps1, dot ps1. All right, dir. And as promised, there's the PowerShell logs. So we're going to do download, because now we're in evil-winrm, so we can use the download command. PowerShell tac logs.csv. So we'll grab that, we'll come back to our folder, and we'll open it. Now I spent a lot of time in here looking for stuff, but really what you're looking for is it's the same encoded string. So you can just grab this encoded string, and here's where it gets rough, okay? So if we copy this, what we can do is we can go back to that website, clear this out of there, and paste it in, and decode. And I was like, oh my Lord, look at this. So this is where I had to get some help. I kind of knew what to do, but there's a lot of trickery in this. So if we copy and we open up, let's open up a new mousepad, okay, or gedit. Oh, this is mousepad. Okay, so we'll paste it. And the first thing you need to do is, this is obviously commands, or it's a comma separated value, and they're probably using that the semicolon as a delimiter. So everywhere you see owned, you just hit enter, just to make the script easier to look at. Because the trick part here is some of these commands are encoded, some are not encoded. It's just a mess. So if you do this, there should be, I think, 8 or 9 lines. Let's see what we got here. There might be one I'm missing here. 1, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm missing. Let's just make, oh, here's another one. Okay, that looks okay, that looks okay, that looks okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I thought there was 8. Yep, here we go. 8. Now, this script is basically creating an array, and then it almost looks like exploit script. I mean, you know how they do the buffer plus equals buffer. what it's doing, it's creating an array of the commands. And the weird part about this is some of these commands are not encoded. Like this is definitely not encoded. But these commands here are definitely encoded. So what I want to do is explain to you, and I actually created some files. One is the explanation, one is the completely decoded script, and then one is what you actually need to run to basically privesc or get the administrator password. Because ultimately what you get out of this entire script is you do get the administrator password. Okay, so this first one looks like it's encoding this string. Now, if you take this string and you try to decode it, it just comes back as gibberish. Okay, I'll show you. Copy. And if we go back here, and we paste it in, when you decode it, it's gibberish, right? The second one is actually encoded, an encoded command. So if you grab this whole string right here, copy, and you go back to here and you paste it in and decode it, there's more commands. That's where this gets real tricky. So if we click decode, now you can see that that's actually a command. So what I did was, just to make this easy to explain to everybody, here's the breakdown. So what you want to do first and foremost is you want to get rid of all of this own stuff and these curly brackets and just have the commands, right? And then to top that off, there are some of these commands where you need to leave off where it's piping stuff to a second part of this command, like this mdr. This actually decodes to IEX. And IEX is the PowerShell built-in alias for invoke expression. So in a lot of cases, if you get rid of that invoke expression, if you run the command, it'll tell you right on the command line. It'll echo what it is uncoded and decoded, or you can try to decode it using one of the websites. But ultimately, what you want to do is have something that looks like this, right? Here's the explanation. This first one with all that owned and all of the stuff removed is basically taking this string and feeding it into a variable, right? You definitely want to run this. If you try to decode this, it's nonsense. The second one actually decodes to start sleep seconds 5, okay? You don't have to run that. You could, but it doesn't serve any purpose. The third one, which is encoded, right, is not encoded. If you look at it, this is the one that I said is not encoded. It's a big hint right there. It says if the computer name equals compromise, exit. So we don't want that to happen because then the rest of the script won't run. So you never want to run this, okay? The next one is encoded. And when you decode it, it's basically checking to see if it could reach Google's DNS server. And if it's true, if this condition is true, it exits, okay? Which it's going to be because they don't have access to the internet from these machines, right? So it's always going to be quiet. If it can't ping Google's DNS server, it's going to exit. So this will always exit the script, so you don't want to run this either. This next command is encoded, right? And if you decode it, you get this right here. This does the same thing as the line up here. It checks to see if the computer's name is compromised, right? So it's looking in the array and it's saying, make sure that this command runs, and if the machine's name is compromised, exit. Or, this is the important part, or, and I just screwed that up, edit, undo, or send that decoded string up here into a memory stream. Okay, so as you can see here, here's that variable with that encoded string up in the first line up here. So you definitely want to run the second part of this. So you would run like from here on, right? The next one is a little complicated as well. This first part pipes to IEX, and then it runs the second part and sends the decoded base 64 to the stream, right? And there's some kind of compression that's happening, right? Which is why when you try to just decode it on its own, it's gibberish. So it has to run through this decompression as well. You definitely want to run that. So to sum up, these are the 3 commands that you need to run. I have a nice breakdown right here in the folder of what the script looks like when you completely remove the curly braces and you decode all the commands, okay? The next thing that I have, so you can see this is all in plain English. You don't need to run this. You definitely don't want to run this. You definitely don't want to run this. You want to run the second part of this, the else. Otherwise, it's going to exit because it's still checking to see if the computer name is compromised. And then you definitely want to run that last one that sends that decoded string to a basically memory stream and decompresses it and unencodes it, okay? You can, when you run it, you could either leave on the IEX or leave it off. If you leave it off, it'll just echo the administrator password to the screen. If you put the IEX in there, it'll basically generate an error and the password will be in the error. So here's what it looks, what you actually need to run, these 3 commands. Now, I said I will have this all up in my GitHub, the explanation and everything, but I just want to show you exactly how you need to do this, right? So we're going to go back to our WinRM session. We're going to minimize this. I just want to make this so you can actually see. Okay. And there's the three commands. So what you need to do is once you have the cleaned up decoded commands, you just copy the first command, which is copying that encoded string into a variable named decoded, right? And you're not going to get any feedback or anything. You're going to hit enter and it's going to just do its thing. Now you're running the second part of that command. You're cutting off the part that checks to see if the computer's name is compromised, because it is, and you don't want it to exit. What you want it to do is to create this memory stream. So we're going to paste the clipboard again, and we're going to hit enter. Now, this last command is the unencoded version of the command, and you want to run this. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to paste it. And if we're successful, the administrator password should appear. There it is. Now, if you ran it with that pipe to IEX, it would just generate an error message and you would see the passwords about 6 times in the error because it's trying to invoke the shell is mightier than the sword as a function, which it's not. So this is actually the administrator password. So with that, now we can evil-winrm. And what we'll do is we got to change the username to administrator. And we got to get rid of this password, and we got to copy in that other password. Let me just grab it because it is quite the password. Copy, paste clipboard. And this should give us an administrator shell. All right, so now we can probably do this. We can cd ... and then we can go into desktop and we can do a dir, and there's the proof.txt, so we'll type proof.txt and I will blur this out. This really was crazy for a beginner machine. You really got to understand PowerShell, and I got to the point where I had this and I was not 100% sure what needed to happen. I was able to decode everything once I figured out that you had to drop off everything, you know, this owned plus equals curly bracket and the end curly bracket. But this is insane. So like again, there is the breakdown, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this explanation um, and the decoded version of the script and what you need to run in GitHub for you, so that way you can take a look at how I did it. But ultimately, you have to go to that website and you can decode individual commands. I'll show you an example. So like if you take this command right here, pretty sure you can just, I think we did this, but I'm going to show you again. You could, yeah, it's right here, actually. You can just paste this in here, and that's how you get the decoded command. Now, to be honest with you, you can run this encoded command too. It'll still work, but I still recommend that you decode the entire script and then you deconstruct what you need to run and what you don't want to run. So for example, we want to run number 1. We want to run this line 9, but we only want to run this part of it, right? And then we want to run this last line. And you don't have to pipe it to IEX. And I did that for you right here. So overall, crazy box. It took me forever. I had to get a hint on how to do this, and then it took me another 2 hours to be able to understand this enough to even try to explain it to you. But basically, that whole script is just feeding a bunch of commands, some of which are encoded, some of which are not encoded, into an array. It's doing tests that Offsec knows are going to fail because the computer is named compromised, so it's always going to fail. And it's not going to be able to ping Google DNS server, so it's always going to fail. So you have to figure that out and then strip those failure conditions out of the code so that you can actually execute the pertinent commands and get that administrator password. I know this is insane. I did the best I could to try and explain it. Like I said, all of the stuff will be in my GitHub, which will be in a link in the description below. So that's the walkthrough. That's how we did this. We exploited SMB. We found an encoded password. We decoded the password. We logged in via evil-winrm. We found a PowerShell script in the troubleshooting folder. We ran that. We got logs. We got an encoded script, basically, which we had to deconstruct in a crazy manner to be able to run the lines we needed to get the administrator password. From there, we were able to evil-winrm into the machine. We were able to get the root flag, and that's that. So I hope you found this video useful. I hope you learned something. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.